Survivor Series. It's here. The 38th annual Survivor Series is this upcoming Saturday from Vancouver, British Columbia. It is the third Survivor Series outside the United States. There is the one in 2016 that is famous in Toronto for Goldberg beating Brock Lesnar in like 5 seconds in the main event.
Yeah.
There is the 1997 one in Montreal that's famous for, well, if you're watching or listening to this podcast, you know a lot about that already.
Uh-huh.
The Montreal Screwjob, obviously, very infamous. And then this one, which is on the West Coast in Vancouver. At what is Rogers Arena, formerly known as General Motors Place, when it hosted the only other pay-per-view event at this arena, which was 1998 Rock Bottom in Your House, which saw a Buried Alive match between The Undertaker and Stone Cold. But that wasn't Survivor Series. That was after. This is the Survivor Series, the 38th one. And it's got WarGames at it. It's the third straight Survivor Series for the WWE that's got WarGames involved. And, to kind of show you, I guess, how special WarGames is and show you exactly maybe one of the things I'll talk about in this about pay-per-view events that have matches specific to them and why that's not always a good thing. This will be the 5th and 6th WarGames in WWE on the main roster, obviously because a men's and a women's for the last 3 consecutive years. There was 9 WarGames matches in the NXT era, and there are 45 WarGames matches in total if you count NWA and WCW as part of the WarGames banner, like not counting AEW stuff, counting essentially matches that were legally allowed to be called WarGames, right? And to kind of put that into perspective, right, we're talking 45 WarGames matches. It sounds like quite a lot. It is. But to put that into perspective, just Hell in a Cell matches under the WWE WWF banner, meaning don't go back to WCW. They don't go under, before all of that, which essentially WarGames goes way back. Just going to Hell in a Cell, which started in 1997 under WWF, there have been 56 of those matches. So to put it into perspective of like how a match can get way out of hand by having way too many of them, shows you right there. That's only been going on under WWE's banner, and essentially we have no NXT Hell in a Cell matches, no WCW Hell in a Cell matches, 56 Hell in a Cell matches. So in comparison, I feel like this is, I don't want to say it's a good amount, but yeah, I mean, you should have like one match to represent 1 year of time when it comes to these major matches, or maybe even 2 if you count women's and men's now. But 45 matches, it's kind of a lot, but at the same time, that's the max. That's where you should max out, right? And we shouldn't be doing what we did with Hell in a Cell. Like again, 56 matches of Hell in a Cell. And I want to say that number is based on like the years where there was like a pay-per-view with like 3 Hell in a Cell matches on the pay-per-view and stuff like that. And that just shouldn't happen. So good news for WarGames. It's not doing that, but also what we learned with Hell in a Cell, we should use to tread lightly with WarGames, right? Hell in a Cell, the pay-per-view, is gone, right? Because of things like that. But here we are on our 3rd consecutive Survivor Series that has WarGames involved. So I guess I'll ask Brandon you this question, right? This is the 3rd straight year. When tickets go on sale for Survivor Series, the pay-per-view itself, should WarGames be pre-advertised to be a part of it going forward?
Yeah, I think it should. I do like the WarGames portion of it. I think it's really cool. I think the WarGames concept is a lot of fun. And, we've been doing this show for many years now. And, I've always said Survivor Series is one of my favorite shows of the year. And, it's the Survivor Series matches are always, fun. I always look at it like they're like the all-star game, so to speak, for WWE. And this is what we're getting. But, like you mentioned, it's not over-concentrated. We're getting one WarGames men's style, the women's style, WarGames match. So we're getting one of each, so 2, and it's another 5-match card. So if this is the formula for success, I think it is. We got 5 good matches. I'm looking forward to each and every single one of these matches. There is not a bad match on this card. I think it's going to set up for a very nice Survivor Series, and it's probably going to go about 3 hours. And I think it'll be a good Saturday night. So I hope they keep this tradition alive. Let's advertise it as WarGames. It's just so we give the fans what they want, because I think the fans love the WarGames. I don't know about you, but I feel like
I do like WarGames. I guess, like I said, tread lightly. I'm not saying get rid of WarGames or anything like that, but again, when you advertise something ahead of time, you have to find a way to then put it in there. Sometimes maybe when it's not warranted, or sometimes when it's a struggle. A good example of that struggle, and we'll talk about it in a minute, right, is making a women's war games match. The men's war game match, we knew what this was going to be. It was going to be Bloodline versus Bloodline ages ago, right? This is a natural fit. But making a women's match in there, and some of these other matches on the card in general, but putting the women's match in war games sometimes seems like we're making things happen that aren't naturally a part of the story. We're kind of, making it happen, right? That we weren't sitting there in July saying, I could tell you what women's war game's going to look like, because we didn't, right? We didn't know who would be on what side, or what, like how that would evolve. We knew the men. We knew it was going to be Bloodline. We knew it was leading to this.
Well, not necessarily. I'll play devil's advocate. I don't think we would know the entirety of the match, but I think we knew, if, barring, obviously Rhea being healthy and all that, obviously that's been an issue. I always had a feeling that in Survivor Series, in one way, shape, or form, there's going to be Liv Morgan on one side and Rhea Ripley on the other side. And then it was kind of, it's been pieced together as it went. I kind of like the fact that Nia Jax is in there. I do like the fact that, Raquel Rodriguez is in the mix. So, it's, in a sense, I figured it's to me, I look at it like this. It's Team Morgan versus, Team Ripley. And it's almost like, in a sense, this is more of the all-star feel that I just mentioned. I know you mentioned the Bloodline OG versus the new Bloodline. I kind of like I kind of like the differences, because you do get the all-star feel. So I do like the fact that we do have a once in I don't want to say once in a generation, but once every few years, you get a faction versus a faction like this. And it's not just an all-star thing. So this is I think it's more of a special attraction versus the traditional Survivor Series, where it's essentially the all-stars of the men's side and the all-star of the women's side. So I kind of like this being it's a little bit different this year, which makes it really cool.
Survivor Series as a whole in general versus all of the other pay-per-views. SummerSlam, right, doesn't have any kind of stereo match go to it. Royal Rumble, King of the Ring, and WrestleMania do. But Survivor Series has, I guess, been famous for its evolution of having different matches, right? You say about the All-Star, right? How many years prior to the War Games was it Raw versus SmackDown as part of Survivor Series, right? Yeah. Champion versus champion, part of Survivor Series. So even, it's funny because right before the War Games, it wasn't Raw versus SmackDown. It was just champion versus champion, meaning the non-champion matches didn't have always a Raw versus SmackDown. But then the years before, they really did have like Team Raw versus Team SmackDown, and it was a real brand thing. And then obviously talking back to the fact that like the Elimination Chamber started at Survivor Series, and other things like that. So, it is a pay-per-view event that has evolved. Thankfully, they have not just killed it like Vince McMahon at one time wanted to do in 2010, because of the fact that it needed evolving. And I will say, Survivor Series, to stay relevant, unlike the others, needs evolving. So War Games is good for now, maybe, but I'm okay with it. Survivor Series having something else down the line. But War Games is good for now. It does make it special in that sense. And I do like that it's tied in with this event for the sake of, like, War Games was always like a fall brawl kind of WCW pay-per-view, right? And War Games, even if I'm not mistaken, right, was a part of the NXT pay-per-views the night before Survivor Series. So it was always like this time of year before WWE evolved it. But one thing about this card I want to chat about, and you say it's a good card, and I'm not saying it's not, but am I alone in thinking that we were so focused, and maybe WWE was so focused on Bloodline versus Bloodline, that they kind of forgot to book some of this card? I mean, it's not until this week that we got some of these matches that we didn't see coming. Like, I knew there was going to be 5 matches. I knew there wasn't going to be 2 or 3, but it wasn't until, like, boom, hey, oh, by the way, LA Knight and Shinsuke Nakamura, we know that feud's kind of happening, but without it, like, being announced on SmackDown, they just, boom, announced it, like, on television. And the same with the triple threat for the IC title.
I would say this. I would say that's the one match. So 4 out of 5, I felt like they were put together nicely. I feel like the Shinsuke LA Knight was, I don't want to say it was like last minute booking, because maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. We're not backstage. I think that's the one match you could argue that, to your point is, maybe they put it together really quick. But I feel like Braun Breaker, Sheamus, and Ludwig Kaiser, I feel like that thing's been brewing for a few weeks now. So I feel like that hasn't been just hodgepodge together really quick. I feel like I feel like it's been building to this point. I would also say, Gunther and Damian Priest, I feel like that's been building as of late as well. I feel like they've done a decent job with that. And then you have your the other two matches are your women's and then men's War Games matches, respectively.
Heading into Monday Night Raw as a television viewer, because we know about these double tapings that have been happening a lot lately, but as a television viewer heading into Monday Night Raw, the go-home show before Saturday's Survivor Series, 3 matches were announced. And to be fair, I wasn't exactly sure what the other 2 matches were going to be. It wasn't just like they will announce this, because like I said, we had to wait kind of until there was that interference on Raw for Sheamus to come out and, attack Ludwig and all that to create that triple threat. I know there was some animosity, but it wasn't a foregone. And LA Knight versus Shinsuke, we saw Shinsuke make his return a few weeks ago on SmackDown, so we knew that was down the line. But, as we've learned with Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens, we know that's down the line also, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's at Survivor Series. It just means it's down the line. And WWE's been good in that sense of creating stories that don't always have to go right to the pay-per-view, meaning they can create Kevin and Cody Rhodes, but that doesn't mean, this is for Survivor Series. This is for the next thing. It can happen down the line. And I maybe thought LA Knight Shinsuke Nakamura was eventually going to happen.
Let me ask you this. Do you see any surprises? Do you see any title changes on Survivor Series?
Title changes? Maybe Shinsuke, because LA Knight, he's had it since SummerSlam, and that's not a long period of time. But, I will say, it isn't the world title right now, right? So I see maybe Shinsuke could do it, kind of hot potato
I got
title
one for
a
you.
Little bit, but the world title, I don't see it. What do you?
I got a hot take. I think no one's talking about it, but I could see Ludwig Kaiser getting the Intercontinental title this weekend. I think it's that
would be
take.
a big push for him. Yes,
he's well deserved. I mean, Ludwig Kaiser is, to me, I know, like, he's always been considered like he's a good friend of Gunther's. I get that. He's always been Gunther's like sidekick or lackey, but Ludwig Kaiser can go. Doesn't matter if he's losing matches in the past. He's always put on a good performance. And I feel like this would be a good spot for him because, let's be honest, Braun Breaker doesn't need the Intercontinental title. I think somebody like Ludwig Kaiser needs the Intercontinental title to get moved.
And now Braun Breaker isn't Goldberg from the 90s here, right? We know that he can take a pin. We know he can lose. But for the most part, he is still a force. And to your point, this is a triple threat match, right? So it does work out perfectly that if you are trying to reserve Braun Breaker from taking another pinfall, from, losing the Intercontinental title similar to what he did, a few weeks ago or months ago with Sami Zayn and that whole thing, was he lost to Jey Uso, actually, right? He lost to Jey Uso, then beat him.
Yeah, Uso.
Yeah. So I guess, like I'm saying, to kind of save him from taking multiple pins, in a calendar year, a triple threat match is created to help ease that burden. So I could say, maybe Ludwig does get the pin because there's going to be a lot of chaos, and it doesn't make Braun Breaker look any worse for the wear if it's a triple threat. And
here's the other thing too, and this is what we'll see. I mean, I know the chances of that happening probably are slim, and that's why I'm calling it a hot take. But wouldn't it be interesting to have Ludwig Kaiser and Gunther having the 2 top titles on their brand? That'd be kind of interesting.
So let's move on to the women's match. I guess it doesn't really – are we going to matter who wins or loses? But are we going to get anything that progresses any storylines out of this? Obviously, we talk about Jade Cargill getting hurt, right? I'm already guessing, right? That's a Bianca Belair thing. We're doing the Triple H Shawn Michaels SummerSlam 02 storyline again.
Yes, we are.
Right? I mean, I'm not sure 100%, right? That's the good thing, right? Yeah. I don't want to know 100%, and maybe it would be cool if it was somewhat of a maybe.
You know what they're going to do? You know what's going to happen, right? Like Jade's going to come back, whenever she comes back, and they're going to play this out for a while, I think, and I think they're going to have. They're going to have Bianca come out, and they're going to be like Jade's going to be like, or Bianca's going to be like, I'm so glad, so glad you're back, and blah, blah, blah. And then Jade says, yeah, I don't think so. And then, and then there's like a camera footage.
Survivor Series 02. Triple H cared all about Shawn Michaels and who attacked him until Shawn Michaels said, actually, there was a camera in that garage. I think we should all take a look at it. And then, Bianca Belair, I could see it's kind of playing the same Triple H card of being like, You're damn right I did it, Jade. You were taking over this tag team.
Yep.
You were standing in my way. I'm a singles competitor. I'm going for the women, and it was you kind of holding me back. I could also see maybe Naomi, right? Because Naomi seems like a third wheel in this kind of friendship, and maybe she's got some animosity, and wants to break this thing up a little bit. But
It'll be interesting to see how they play that part out for sure.
we obviously saw there's going to be no surprise filling her spot at WarGames. It's going to be Bailey. That's not Becky Lynch. That's not Charlotte Flair. That's not
Yeah.
a major surprise like I was hoping. But again, any storylines? Obviously, we've got Liv Morgan on one side, Rhea Ripley on the other. Anything involved here that you think that's going to leave other than just good guys winning or bad guys winning?
Yeah, I could see Tiffany Stratton and Nia Jax having something soon. I feel like that's on the horizon. If I had to pick anything out of that particular match, I feel like we've kind of seen bits and pieces of it over the last I don't know, a few weeks, handful of weeks, whatever the case may be. I feel like that's bound to happen at some point, and I think eventually Tiffany Stratton's going to cash in, and I'm just curious to see if it will certainly be Nia Jax.
On to the the men's WarGames match. It's Bloodline versus Bloodline 2.0. CM Punk, kind of a surprise. I didn't see that coming. I was actually thinking, obviously, Seth Rollins was a safe bet. But then when Paul Heyman came out, a part of me thought maybe Brock Lesnar, and I think Brock Lesnar would actually be a little more interesting because of the feud between Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar over the years. You know what I mean? Kind of teaming up similar to how Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns just teamed up recently, right? So have those two competitors have to join forces. Because CM Punk really hasn't been a competitor for Roman Reigns, right? He's been over on the other side of things, on the Raw side, while Roman was on the SmackDown side. But it is CM Punk, kind of a surprise. What element do you think he brings to this, and essentially, how does that play out? Is he going to hurt the team? Is he going to help the team? Does maybe Seth Rollins come out and attack CM Punk to hurt the team? I mean, who's leaving here as the winner, and essentially, how does it happen?
I mean, that's an interesting point you just made with Seth Rollins sticking his nose in, because obviously there are well-documented issues with CM Punk that we've seen, since CM Punk's return, which just happened just over a year ago. I popped up on my memories, just the other day, and it was CM Punk's return. But yeah, I mean, I think the OG Bloodline's going to lose. I feel like I do think Roman Reigns, I'm sorry, the OG Bloodline's going to win. The new Bloodline's going to lose. Excuse me there. I think the OG Bloodline will take care of business. I think what's going to happen is CM Punk is going to carry his weight. I think he's going to do a really good job until Seth Rollins gets involved. And that was something you kind of stole my thunder, because that's where I was going to go as well. So we were kind of thinking the same thing, where I feel like Seth Rollins gets involved in a way where it almost takes CM Punk out of the picture, so to speak, where it almost goes down to like a 5-on-4 in certain cases. But I do think the OG Bloodline pulls it out. I think the new Bloodline will lose, and I think it's gonna. I'm just curious to see if there's any crazy surprises that are going to happen. Is there anything that you think that you could think of that could pop out of nowhere that you're like, wow, I didn't think that was really going to happen? You think Brock Lesnar?
I mean, obviously, there is The Rock, right? We can't forget about him in this Bloodline storyline.
True.
But it is tough because the heel Bloodline, right? 2.0 won at the last pay-per-view, Bad Blood against Roman Reigns and his squad. Or what was it? What were they at Crown Jewel, or was that a whole? I can't even remember. I think it was Crown Jewel. It's Crown Jewel. Yes, because Cody Rhodes and I think Roman Reigns did the tag team one, and then they did the 3-on-3. So it's like they're progressing 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 5-on-5. So yes, at the 3-on-3 at Crown Jewel, the Bloodline 2.0 got the win. So it'd be very difficult for me to see them winning, back to back, right? Because you got to kind of keep the story fresh in that sense. But at the same time, how do you have this team full of ragtag guys who none of them are former singles champions, tag team champions, world champions, right? They're kind of a hodgepodge of indie guys in this Bloodline, when the main stars are in the Bloodline, Sami Zayn, Roman Reigns, CM Punk, former world champions over here versus guys who are trying to make a name for themselves. How do you have them lose but keep it fresh in the sense of, that they don't lose credibility, and that's tough because I know we're going to get Roman versus Solo at some point one-on-one. That's inevitable. But how do we keep like Tonga Loa and Jacob Fatu, like credible guys that could essentially win as part of a team, but also even win individually?
Well,
If they
I think with Jacob Fatu, it's going to be a situation where it's going to take more than one of the OG bloodline to take him down. I think that's the easy to answer. I think it's not going to be a one-on-one situation. I feel like there's going to be maybe a numbers game advantage, and I feel like the OG bloodline is going to use the numbers, and they're going to maybe 3-on-1 or 4-on-1, 5-on-1, team up on Jacob Fatu and take him out, and that's going to make him not look any worse for wear. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa. I mean, I feel like with this, regardless of them being part of the bloodline, I kind of feel like they're just kind of there. I feel like it's like
in the 3-on-3 match, right? Like, it's Solo, right? But who he's going to be with is like interchangeable, right?
That's the thing to me. I look at the bloodline 2.0, so to speak. I look at it like this: there's Solo, there's the Samoan Werewolf Jacob Fatu, and then there's the other guys. That's how I look at it, and that's why I still think that Roman's OG bloodline will still come out ahead, and I still think Jacob Fatu is going to look good because I really think they're going to attack him with multiple competitors. And the other two guys, Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, I mean, like, what's their stock anyways? They're gonna, if they lose one-on-one to somebody, I don't think it's going to hurt them one way or the other.
And we got Bronson Reed in there too. Forget he's the wild card, and that's kind of why I thought we'd get Seth Rollins for Bronson Reed and Seth Rollins. It seemed like inevitable, right? That's the feud that's going on. They're going to
you know what? You just gave me an idea. I mean, with the Bronson Reed factor, obviously Seth Rollins has issues with not only Bronson Reed but CM Punk. What if something happens there where Rollins comes in to attack Bronson Reed, and then incidentally something happens with him and CM Punk, and then the fireworks are off there,
or vice versa, right? Goes out there to attack CM Punk, and while he's attacking him, Bronson Reed takes advantage.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's going to be interesting to see how that potentially unfolds.
Last look, there's actually, crazy enough, right? Kind of a look at the stock figures. It is WWE. They're going for the full arena in Vancouver, but there's still a decent amount of tickets left. The cheapest ticket is $200 Canadian, and maybe that is preventing it from essentially being a sellout as of now. We're only a few days away. Crazy stat right here. There is still, right, over 20 second row seats available. I'm not talking StubHub. We're talking, we don't talk, because there's always going to be seats available if you got money from all sources. We're talking right from the box office, right? We're talking right from the WWE. And WWE has still yet to sell and get money for up to 20 second row seats. I think there's like almost 100 floor seats that are still overall not sold. And there's like a good over 1,000 seats, it looks like. I didn't count them all, from WWE that they haven't sold yet, that are essentially available, that they put on sale and haven't gotten the money for yet. Like other stuff, obviously StubHub, they've gotten the money. They don't care if anyone sits there because they've gotten the cash. But,
exactly.
But when it comes to the seats they're selling, so I'm wondering if they're going to do a drop off closer to showtime of some of these, like the $200 for like the get in price. That's 200 Canadian, which is like 150 American. But I wonder if, maybe when the show starts to get closer, maybe that $900 second row seat drops down to maybe like $400. Those upper deck seats that are 200 drop down to maybe 100 or under. And I say that because my hope is that stuff happens, because while I like WWE right now, they know how hot they are. I think that's an issue, right? From a fan's perspective, is that they're not out there, as we learned with WrestleMania, trying to give you a deal. They know how hot they are, and they're pricing things accordingly to what they think they can get, and they're letting them sit there, right? It's like if you have a baseball card that somebody said is you could get $50,000 for it, right? You're turning down, you're putting it out there for $50,000, and you're sitting on it. You're letting offers come by, waiting to just score big. And I hope that backfires at some point. I want WWE to be good. Who doesn't? I want it to be popular. I want it to be in front of sold out crowds. But I would like them to maybe say, okay, let's ease back a little bit on some of these prices. Because I think that's a very TKO Endeavor kind of initiative here, right? They're running the UFC and they see what they can get for UFC tickets, which are like
Yeah.
absurd, right? Thousands of dollars to get into a
Yeah.
UFC event nowadays.
Yeah.
And they're trying to push that on the WWE. They're trying to say, hey, forget the families. Let's see if we can start to like really nickel and dime these major fans. And I'm hoping it backfires a little bit and makes them go, okay, let's reel it back in. Okay, let's have some affordable tickets as part. For a good example is we talked about, right, the Monday Night Raw on Netflix. The cheapest ticket that they were selling, not after, and this is post packages. These are like just tickets, was like $300 to get in the door, and they were selling it like, and that's insane. $300 for an upper deck seat to go to Monday Night Raw. Like, that's if I walk up to the box office and I'm there with my son and I'm like, hey, 2 tickets to Monday Night Raw. We just want the cheapest ones. How much does it cost? And they're like $600 for a pair. That's insane. Like, again, that's not from a scalper. That's not from somebody trying to hose you. That's from the WWE trying to hose you. So hopefully some of this stuff they could scale back a little bit, because if it costs $300 to go to a Monday Night Raw from here on out, right, that is without a doubt is going to price literally most fans, even like myself, out of it. But crazy to think, as we wrap up the Survivor Series talk, this pay-per-view started on American Thanksgiving night, many years ago, and it's now evolved to be where it's not just not on Thanksgiving, but it's the SmackDown the night before is pre-taped in order to give the talent essentially that time off heading into it. So it went from making them work on the holiday itself to not even making them work the day after the holiday. So it's kind of crazy how that evolved. I guess one final thing we'll kind of chat about, and the Survivor Series, it's weird because it's in Canada, so the store and stuff and events will still be going on even on American Thanksgiving Day. People like Chelsea Green, who are Canadian, will be signing autographs on Thursday afternoon. So they pick strategically people like her to be out there at like the store doing appearances, and probably some other people who are not American, right, will be the ones doing the appearances on Thursday, because it's nothing to them. They're wondering why SmackDown is pre-taped. They're like, hey, it's not a holiday week for us. But Survivor Series, the second straight pay-per-view, I guess, that's in an Eastern time zone at 6 p.m. We saw Bad Blood at 6 p.m. to get out of the way of a UFC event. I don't know if there's a UFC event, but I don't think there is. This one's at 6 p.m., right? 3 p.m. local, 6 p.m. What are we making of the 6 p.m. starts on Saturdays? I think they're a little early. We're getting a little early, especially with it being a Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's just a touch early, and I would say 7's probably a good number, a good place to start. I mean, for me personally, I watch a lot of football on Saturdays, and in Syracuse is playing. They're going to be playing right around the same time, if I'm not mistaken, as Survivor Series. If I have to check my calendar to be sure, but I think it's an afternoon game, and depending on when it is, I might not be watching Survivor Series live because of how big that game is. If it was at 7, I'd probably be about watching the game live, or watching Survivor Series live and watching the game before. So yeah, it's a little weird. I like 7. 7's a good number. I think 8 you're pushing it, because 8 to 11, I'd rather see 7.
I mean, it is Saturday. It is Saturday night, so as long as it stays like under the 3-hour mark, I have no complaints. It's crazy because obviously I was just at an AEW pay-per-view, which doesn't start until 8 and it goes 4 hours. They know it's going to be an extremely long pay-per-view. That's a pay-per-view that I think should have started at 6 o'clock.
I thought they were still going. I thought they were still going as we were recording, because I feel like that show just keeps going on and on and on.
They very well could be. Like I said, I don't think I've ever gone to an AEW event, whether it's a pay-per-view or a television show, where I stay to the point where like they turn the lights on and you can see them like taking the ring apart. I'm normally out the door before that. Even at Full Gear, I was out the door before that. I actually
just a side note. I was checking. Obviously we're a Syracuse-based podcast, so Syracuse football is very big in our parts. Not for everybody, but for a lot of people in this town, like myself. It's a 3:30 game against the number 8 ranked Miami Hurricanes. The Hurricanes haven't been in this in the Dome in a long time, so it's going to be a hot ticket here.
Might be a dual TV near the end of the game kind of thing, depending on where you're at.
I mean, okay, I'll be honest with you. Not to get too far down the football thing. If, say, Syracuse is getting their butts whooped at that point and the game is pretty much, it's done, then I'll probably just put on Survivor Series. But if it's a good game, I'll be watching Survivor Series maybe a little bit later.
I think it's weird from my end because, as you know, and also inside baseball in our personal lives, on Saturday, I'm going to be working some hockey, and normally it's a kind of a thing where you you watch a little of it, right, while you're doing the job, and then obviously games that start at 7 o'clock and later wrap up, and you go home, and I get home in order to watch the main event or the finish. But in this time, I'll actually be watching the entire pay-per-view within that window of time. So by the time like local hockey games are done on a Saturday night, because this pay-per-view will be over by 9 o'clock, or just about, right,
Yeah.
which is crazy to think. But I think it's a little early. You know, it's crazy because I think one thing that we may disagree on is I think if it's on a Saturday night. Now, maybe I could be wrong, especially because it's in Vancouver, and I would be fine with maybe like a UFC kind of thing where it's just like solely so far away from the other stuff at 10 o'clock at night, where you can kind of just focus on that. There isn't anything else going on. If you went out to dinner, you're home for the night, you're packed in, your shoes are off, and similar to, like I said, to the UFC kind of thing, where they're like 10 to 1 a.m. Obviously, I wouldn't want that on a Sunday, but on a Saturday night, just where it's like all the sports are done for the day, you can just focus on that. I think that'd be kind of cool. I would like that, I guess, if I had to pick one or the other. I would pick that versus the 6 o'clock, especially if I'm in Vancouver. That's a 3 o'clock start. You're going to be in the door at 2 o'clock. Pre-show starts at 1 o'clock local in Vancouver.
You're going to get a surprising answer out of me. I honestly wouldn't mind that because for me personally, like I'm the type of person. Yeah, I guess I'm the one that goes to bed earlier than you do. So for me, I'm up early enough the next day so I could put it on Sunday morning early on and just not look at my phone when I wake up and just put it on and eat breakfast, and I can have it done by, I don't know, like say like 9 o'clock in the morning and then go on with my day. So I mean that would work because for me personally, I'm an early bird. I'm up early, so it would work. It would work for me.
6 o'clock would also work for me on a Sunday. I think that's a perfect time. It's weird how we've evolved, right? We used to have pay-per-views at 8 o'clock at night on a Sunday that go to like 12:45 a.m., like WrestleMania 35, right? Went to like 1 a.m. into Monday morning. And now in just a few short years, we've turned it to 6 o'clock on a Saturday where it could go to 1 o'clock in the morning and nobody cares, but it's only going to go to like 9 o'clock. So it is kind of weird that it is like a matinee, right? We went from Sunday night to like, who's staying up till 1 a.m. on a Sunday to I can stay up a little bit later than 9 o'clock on a Saturday. So I think they got to find some sort of balance. Yeah. They need to find a balance, but we move on, and that's Survivor Series, like I said, the 38th from Vancouver, Rogers Arena in Vancouver. Hopefully sooner rather than later, that stadium or that city moves into an event that's at the stadium, and I'll head out to Vancouver for a second time in my life and go check out a big event. And I would love to see Survivor Series. It's the only of these events that hasn't, I guess, drawn the stadium size. Like that's the only one. Elimination Chambers has been stadiums now, right? Money in the Bank is getting to that point where it's a major event and could be in a stadium. They tried putting it in Allegiant Stadium before. They didn't sell enough tickets and had to move it out of the stadium. But like everything else, SummerSlam, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, all stadiums. Survivor Series is the only one that's like 100% of their events have all been in arenas. So I would love to see it get to a point where it is kind of treated more like how it's supposed to be. And that's the second oldest pay-per-view in the WWE calendar. Final note on Survivor Series, the last pay-per-view ever on the WWE Network. Obviously, the WWE Network has been living internationally, but it will die on December 31st all over the world. It won't exist whether you live in Canada, America, India, wherever, right? This year's Survivor Series is on WWE Network, where it is being held in Vancouver, and it will be the last pay-per-view ever on the WWE Network, which is crazy to think about as well.